Arboretum unit, and so here we are. So I'm Phil Wood. I want to welcome you all. Thanks for all coming to remember Mike Lee.
Thank you for having the event.
And then Arthur was going to talk a little bit about what he remembers of Mike Lee, and then we'll open up to an open mic. And we want to stop at 7 to have a meal, and we can still be talking over the meal too, remembering Mike. Take it away, Arthur.
Thanks to Phil and Judy for hosting us. And I'm going to be quick. I wrote a very long article about Mike that is in the current issue of the Arboretum Bulletin. It's only 3 pages, but the long version, which goes on and on, is on my website. Plus, other people, including in this room, contributed stuff. So if you're unfamiliar with this, I'll leave this for show and tell. It's a little 3-page tribute. And I met Mike when I was still in college at the UW. I was 19 or 20, I forget. There was a landscape architect, Steve Worthy, sitting right there, and he was teaching a class, and he had Mike come as a guest lecturer. And then afterwards, I wanted to write my book, Trees of Seattle, and I asked Steve, who knows, is this a microphone?
Yes, you don't have to
All right.
get too close.
I asked Steve, who do you suggest I talk to who knows more about oak trees? I'm having some problems with oak trees in Seattle. There's more than 40 different species growing in the city, exclusive of those that are only at the Arboretum. And he said, talk with Mike Lee. So I got Mike Lee's contact information and sent Mike Lee a letter. And so Mike invited me over for a meal, and we jawboned about trees. And so we ended up knowing each other over 41 years, all right? And since I love plants and Mike loves plants, and I like writing, that's why I wrote this, okay? Because I'm good at communication. Trust me, I am. But some of us here have to leave early, like Walt Bubelis here has to leave early, and I want to let him talk and then go do another meeting. And Phil, there's so many of us, we have to be brief. The reason I'm going to shut up is because I wrote down almost everything, and if you want to see it on my website, the website's mentioned in here, or it's just arthurleej.com, and under articles there's a big long thing about Mike. And if any of you want to write something that I post on that website, I'll do it. No, and no deadline, no rush, no pressure. If you misspell a word and I catch it, I'm going to fix it. That's all. Okay. Walt, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you, Arthur Lee.
We at one point we got to do a toast to Mike. Sorry.
You're right.
Mike didn't eat meat and he didn't drink, but those of us who drink, to his memory, we got to do this.
To Mike! Well, I was trying to remember when I first met Mike, and it may have been at one of the symposiums that, or symposia that Betty Miller held at the Seattle Center. Some of you may have attended that ages ago. Anyway, I became aware of his prowess with oaks and southern hemisphere plants, and started buying plants, visiting the nursery at the end of Vashon Island, the Colvos Creek, and I've since given many of my catalogs to the Miller Library to be able to house those in a proper setting. And I have one, and then afterwards I've been able to bring classes from Edmonds to his garden, and and then one time, it was 2 years ago, I knew he was starting to suffer, and so we did a yard cleanup for him. We had a team of locals and students, and we went through and did a kind of a cleanup and cutting collection. And I know that Del Brummett was interested in some of the cuttings that we got to successfully take, and Arctostaphylos in particular. But I have one funny tale of Mike. I didn't realize for a time that he didn't drive, and he took public transportation. And so I had asked him, and he agreed to teach a class for us one summer at Edmonds. And that's not easily connected with Vashon Island. And I said, well, if you're coming, how about I order a couple plants from you to bring? And so he's on the bus with about 3 plants, and Dan would appreciate this. He gets there, and I meet him in the evening, 6:30 class or so, and he's saying, Acadanthra. I didn't realize how prickly this is, because it was in a paper sack, and it was just hitting his chin all the way on the trip up. And I still have his Acadanthra, a New Zealand plant, and so, boy, what a wonderful soul, so kind and generous. When I brought a class or a group there, he always had a special cake or sweet that he took the time to make for the group. And so we'd sit out there for lunch and just kind of share tales, reminisce of the moment, and but always willing to identify, even via email, if we got unknown labels mixed up. What is that, Escalonia or so forth? And he was always gracious enough to give his time. So, like many of you, he will dearly be missed. So, thank you. So, who next?
I'll go next.
Okay, well, thank you, Arthur.
So, Mike Lee's passing cuts so deep
Who are you?
in our family.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Mike. Mike Yates. Thank you. And he, our children, he became our children's best friend, and it just goes on and on. I met Mike in 1972 through a UW landscape program in England. The two of us attended, and I was one of the only 2 architecture students on the trip. And I always had kind of a real interest in landscape, and I took all my elective credits in landscape, and then I would say that, you know, Mike, I befriended Mike in England, and, you know, I just was drawn in by his passion. And so we would, on the weekends, we'd just take off and we'd go to gardens that weren't on the schedule. And the one that was really crazy was, he said, oh, Tresco Abbey Gardens, you can't believe about this place. It's totally tropical at 50 degrees latitude. And so I said, great, okay, this weekend. And so we took off, and we hitchhiked the whole way, of course, and we ended up sleeping in a park in Penzance, and then we overslept the ferry, and so, you know, oh God, you know, okay, so we went back to London, and so I think it was probably the next weekend, okay, we're going to do it this time. I bought a wind-up alarm clock, you know, and we made the ferry, and it was, Tresco Gardens are truly remarkable. Any tropical or subtropical is there. It's really incredible. Okay, so, and then after college, I remember going over to Mike's house, and instead of serving me beer or pot, you know, it was drink eucalyptus tea together. It was something he picked on leaves off of his garden. And in 1976, he met my wife, Kathy, and my future wife. And he was best man at our wedding. So, and he's very much a part of our life. Thank you.
Well, can I just stand up here and talk?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, great, thank
Yes,
you.
you may.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kathy Hughes, and I'm married to that guy over there. And you're about to meet our daughter, Michelle, and her little one, who Mike Lee knew, right? You sent him a card, right? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. This is a little off color, but I'm gonna share it with you anyway. I met Mike Lee out at the Arboretum, and we were, that's right. And this is a lot correct.
No, go for it.
Okay, so, I mean, he knew, I was preaching to the choir. He knows everything about everything. And I remember we were walking, and we were looking at this, a conifer of some sort. Conifer is a tree that has cones. Okay, well, I just want to make sure. In case he's listening, that I really was listening. But anyway, and he was telling me about, I reached down to grab one of the cones, and, well, I didn't. I reached out, but I just pointed, and I said, and what tree is that from? And he looked at me and he went, Kathy, I really didn't know it, but I was pointing at a dog turd. The dog must have been constipated because it looked like, constipation, the little things, they all rolled up. It looked like a cone. Oh my God. And he said, because, I don't know if you guys knew him as having a sense of humor, but it was funny. It was funny because he went, Kathy. It was just so funny because he really thought that I thought it was a cone. Kathy. But I think he knew what tree it was from because it really was a cone. Anyway, enough said. But that man, not only could he, and somebody else might say this as well, not only did he know every plant, I swear to God, in the world, but he could cook. He could make magic out of, I remember the Copos Creek going out, he gave me a jackknife and said, go out and cut, what was that? It was a cabbage. And I brought in this cabbage that, it was a sick looking cabbage. And he made the yummiest meal, I don't know what it was, but he's also vegetarian. And he made the yummiest vegetarian meal out of this gorgeous cabbage that he had grown in his. So anyway, he not only had a sense of humor, but he was a cook. And, he was just a great pal.
Yeah.
A great friend. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we've got a picture that he gave us that he drew. Do you know what is that picture that hangs up in Adam's room? I think it's still there. And it looked like one of his Copos Creek.
Yes.
Yeah. And
No, we've got a lot.
So there it is on the wall. Every time I see it, I just get this lump in my throat. I don't know. I'm gonna go on and on and on. Somebody's gonna have to pull the cane and all. But anyway, he was a wonderful man, a wonderful friend to I think so many of us. A teacher. I mean, he was everything. He was a great guy. And then to have to deal with what he had to deal with. But you know what? Nobody gets out of this life alive, as we all understand. So anyway, I'm gonna sit down.
Thank you. I'll be really brief, but I am gonna follow it up after my two parents. You know, I grew up with Mike Lee. They had him over to the house for dinner probably once a month. And I just remember he taught me, in retrospect I realized this, like he taught me really how to listen, how to be quiet and comfortable with being quiet and to pay attention. You know, I didn't know anyone else who would just come over to the house and the first thing they wanted to do was just walk around the garden, you know, spend time in nature. And the thing that felt so profound and exciting about his visits was actually when I would go to bed. Because after we would have dinner, he would sit down at the piano and I would fall asleep to the most beautiful music. To this day, I don't think I can listen to Moonlight Sonata without weeping.
Oh,
It
yes,
just means
yes.
Mike Lee to me.
Yeah.
Sweet. Very sweet.
Well, Lee asked me, Arthur Lee Jacobson asked for me to just add a little tidbit to what he mentioned. I was so fortunate to have Mike.
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I'm Steve Worthy, landscape architect, went to school with Mike, traveled with both Mikes to landscape studies in England in 1972, in the summer of 72. And so our lives were blended together for decades. In the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, we had different phases.
I now know just who you are.
And then, but when Arthur Lee was in the process of taking my class, and I realized the brilliance residing in this human being here, it seemed to me that one thing that was missing was the opportunity to put you and Mike Lee together. So that the two of you, it's almost like Velcro. They're introverts and extroverts. They're people that have all kinds of different mental and social acumens that just, they're brilliant in different ways. And so the fact that the two of you got together and blended all of the huge abilities that you have, all the knowledge, all the spirit and everything, it was just the greatest gift. And I was able to watch that through decades. Of course, we did some wonderful work together, got lots of awards, did some beautiful things, but it was such a perfect arrangement. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike, for having such a wonderful part of my life wrapped up in knowing you for decades and decades.
You're here. Yes.
I'll just, I'd be more comfortable if I wasn't being photographed. Because I feel like no, it's all right. I feel like I should say, I'm Dan and I'm nearly an alcoholic. But, not quite. I didn't know Mike as well as I would have liked, but I can tell you that whenever I was with him, I was just so calm with him, and the kindness that he had just seemed to fill the space, whether it was outside or it was inside a room. And you know, the Pacific Northwest is is rich with people who have raised the bar as far as plants go. But Mike was the original.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for him and at Culvis Creek, I think that he really planted the seed that created so many other great gardens together. I wanted to honor him with an award that I had cooked up, but it didn't go anywhere. But serendipitously, I got an email just 2 weeks ago from Tony Avent. And he sent me a picture of a Calycanthus sinensis that he had purchased at Culvis Creek years ago, over 25 years ago. And it was pink. And so he shared it with a bunch of other colleagues and said, I think this is worth naming, and he was going to call it Calycanthus chinensis Pink Abundance. I mentioned the fact that Mike has passed, and that how nice it would be if he could be honored. So it will be entered into the trade as Mike's Pink Abundance, Calycanthus chinensis. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
So I'm Tanya DeMarsh Dodson, and I, like Mike, started out in history, but ended up in horticulture, where actually I sort of started thanks to my grandparents and my mother, but here I am. I worked a lot here in the Pacific Northwest, and I got to know Mike. And, you know, we're all lucky that people like Mike wander around. They have grace, spirit, energy, and capacity. And they share that and share it well. And all of us who live and garden here in the Pacific Northwest can partake of that now, thanks in part not only to his practice of landscape architecture, but also his work with nurseries. And I think of that picture of him at the public market in the 70s, selling plants. We're damn lucky here. One of the reasons that this area is as good at horticulture that it is because of people like Mike and other people who grow these remarkable plants that we can garden with. And that's not, you know, as well known as it might be. But Pete, Mike, there are a lot of people in this room and elsewhere who are keen on plants and grow them so that other people can garden with them. And that's one of the things that makes a great place to garden, and Dan too. I'm part of the reason that, or I'm not part of the reason, but I'm part of the difficulty that can be had in trying to get things to happen, that there isn't an award that we can give him. And I can't say it will never happen, but NHS was maybe thinking about doing an award program, and it's not going to happen soon, but it might happen. And in which case we might be able to give an award to Mike. But, you know, Walt talked about people going to his garden and gardening. And there were a bunch of us that used to go to Mike's on occasion, along with Ron Brightman. And one time we did the same thing that Walt's group did. John Nielsen had a truck, and it was pretty overgrown. There was a lot of pruning that needed to be done, so we all went down there, and it looked better afterwards. And we all had a good time, and Mike made some food, and that was good too. So, you know, but it's the joy of community, but more than that, the intelligence with which he offered plants for us and also designed for people. I mean, I think the people who had him do the gardens for them are probably still very happy they did, because he had the ability to listen. He had the knowledge to understand how to evolve a garden, and that's what he would give them. So, enough said.
Step up. A number of things that led into this. I don't know if anybody has seen this picture.
That's what I was referring to.
I shot this with a Kodak Polaroid back in '83, I think. It was one of the few places that we were marketing stuff from out of Colvos at the time. And it was just perfect light, the light coming in behind him. And I was printing it today, and I was looking at it and talking about Mike's sense of humor and prickly plants. Mike's eclectic choice of plants was all over the place, from perennials to the trees. And so we would just put stuff out there, and he had all of his special labels and everything that he hand wrote. But I think there was like a bench along the front where we put the bigger plants. And one day we had a whole bunch of monkey puzzle seedlings that were about this big. And we had them along the front. And about midday, a family came through, and this kid was holding a balloon. And boom! Bumped into the Araucaria needle, exploded the balloon, and there was this silence. 1, 2, and so from then on, every time we went there, we would put at least one monkey puzzle out along the front and see what we could lure in. But anyway, Mike, I met both Steve and Mike at the same time in '81 as part of the Plants of the Northwest course at Experimental College. And I went back the second year in '82, and at the time, the person who was caretaking the place was leaving, so I said, sure. So I wound up there. And starting from that point, because I had a car and Mike didn't, he started talking about this trip to California. He was obsessed with going down there to collect. And so it got to the fall where seeds were starting to form, and I said, it's time to go. So we got in my truck, drove to San Francisco, and we were wandering around Stribing Arboretum, and almost done with picking a few things. We were being sort of careful. I mean, Mike was always respected the plants. He was not looking to strip everything. He just wanted to gather some things. And we were just about done, and all of a sudden this guy on a horseback came around the corner. And it was a ranger, a park ranger. And he rode up to us and goes, "What are you guys doing?" And he said, "You're not supposed to be collecting in here, blah, blah, blah." And he wanted to take us to the director to, I don't know. It wasn't any sort of major offense or anything, but we sort of asked, could we see the director and talk to him and see if we could get permission to do this? So he brought us in, And we got there, and Mike, in being his usual humble self, was sort of beating around the bush. And he had brought the list of everything he was growing at Colvos at the time. And I said, show him the list. And so he did. And all of a sudden, the director just went silent. He said, what do you want? And he said, there are about 5 things that we're collecting now that you can't have, but anything else is yours. And he wrote us a permission slip, and we went back out and finished collecting. But he also suggested that we go to see Marshall Olbrich at Western Hills. And so we went and saw Marshall after that. And then Marshall said, you need to go. Well, Marshall was amazing. That was a revelation in itself, and his garden and all the plants he was growing there. And he said, you've got to go to see this O'Brien Bog up in Oregon. And so on the way back home, we swung up there, and it was just this botanical wonderland of, as you drove up through the logging roads, all the vegetation was changed. You'd get different manzanitas, the dwarf bay, the canyon live oaks and everything. And we collected a bunch. Oh, and of course the giant stand of the pitcher plant, Darlingtonia, that was just like 1/3 of an acre of it out there. It was just amazing. That was my sort of like initiation into the plant world. And that wouldn't have happened without Mike, so it was just pretty amazing. Anyway.
Thank you, Pete.
Sure.
Thank you.
There's some pictures of his garden over here that I took back in May, so.
That's cool. I wanted to follow you, Pete, because my name is Sue Nevler, and I'm a transplant from Cape Cod. And when I came out in 1985, I worked for Vibe Beal at the country store. And so Mike would bring his plants and sell them out there. And so that's when I first met him, way, way back. But what a wonderful man. You know, I went out and visited the nursery, and every time all those NHS plant sales, he'd be there smiling warmly, you know. And so I knew him for a long time. And I asked him, I did during COVID, I was trying to figure out how to get people still in public gardens. And so I did a website, PugetSoundGardens.org. And Mike, I asked him if he would do a pop-up gallery. And he honored me because he did something that you can look at. And his pop-up was rarities. And he talked about how some people go to public gardens to walk with their friends, or sometimes they go just, you know, to spend an afternoon. And he said, there's a lot of us who are plant people, and we go to the gardens, the public gardens, for the plants. And so if you want to take a look at all the plants that Mike thought were important, that are rarities, it's on the website. But I loved hearing the story about the piano, one of those skills and interests of his that aren't the plant things. And he was very bad because I like to travel. And he was always like, Sue, where are you going next? You know, I'm really enjoying this, you know, like, where are you going next? And so he was such a diverse, warm, wonderful person. I miss him.
Come on, people, so we can eat when you finish talking.
Okay.
So I didn't know Mike Lee that well. But years and years ago, someone told me, you got to go to this nursery called Koval's Creek. So I went. It blew my mind. It was full of these exotic plants I'd never seen before. So I don't have a good thing to say about Mike because he turned me into an addict. I just love these rare and unusual plants that I'd never seen. And so I came home with a truckload of them in my little car. And that started a whole new life for me in a way, because I totally fell in love with rare and unusual plants. And I'm so glad that you and me, Arthur, went out there to see him. And because when I saw him, he explained what every plant was. And I saw the passion in his eyes and his descriptions. And when we went back, he was just as passionate, telling us about every one of the incredible plants in his garden. And all over the neighborhood. It was one of the nicest days of my whole life. So I'm so glad I got to see Mike and get to know him better. So even though he turned me into an addict, I'm really glad I got to know him.
I think you were all ready to know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I feel worthy to follow Cisco. I'm certainly not worthy to have followed everybody else that actually had the pleasure of knowing Mike personally. I never had the honor of meeting the man, but I did know him through Facebook. My name is Hans Youngman. I have a tree appreciation group that I run, Vashon Tree, Big Old Vashon Tree Love Society. And Mike was a sometimes commenter and a contributor to the discourse. And I have had the pleasure of seeing some of the places that Mike lived out there on Vashon, and some of the places that he had planted, or people had planted, gotten trees and stuff from him. And just the amazing varieties that he brought to the island and seeded on Vashon. It's just there's little horticultural treasure troves just all around the island. And I tried to get him to come out to Vashon, maybe starting in 21, and he was very cautious, I think, at the time about exposure, and he had mentioned, well, maybe when things settle down a little bit with the virus. And then I pinged him a couple more times, and it just never did happen, unfortunately. So I envy all of you that knew the man, and I'm sad that I never got to meet him in person. One other thing here, now that I have Arthur here, Arthur had worked with several Vashon ladies back in the day. That they started a program that was associated with the Audubon Society, the Vashon Maury Island Landmark Trees Program. This was in the early 90s, and they cataloged and unique and unusual trees on Vashon, and then Arthur gave a few talks out there, and I sought to update that list that they made. And so Nancy and Raina, Nancy Silver, she's Nancy Ewer now, and Raina Holtz, they turned over the materials from the original program to me and said, do what you would like with it. So I went through the list and went and visited all the trees that I could find that were still in existence, and made posts about them. And part of that was they gave me all the pictures that they had taken back then. And there's some here with Arthur in them, and I'd like to give them to him. And if you want to know what Arthur looked like wearing short shorts, there's a picture in there. Maybe he'll share that with you. Thanks for allowing me to come.
Would you repeat the name of your group? I really enjoy when you post. It's really fantastic.
It's the Big Old Vashon, Big Ol, O-L, apostrophe, Big Old Vashon Tree Love Society.
Yeah, it's really, I'm very proud of what you're doing. It's really great. It's really interesting.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. You recognize some of those, Arthur?
Back then, my hair was dark, and I had a beard, like, not as long as yours.
So I was trying to figure it out, like, besides everything you've said, what was special to me about Mike, and I just got it. He helped me articulate what wild is. He helped me understand that what I really appreciated most personally is species, not cultivars. Cultivars are okay, but I love species, and I love letting plants of any size do what they want to do. And that's my favorite thing. And I live in a tight little space on the north end of Vashon and have a large collection of Mike's plants that do just that. They grow the way they want to grow. And, you know, I know how to prune. I'm well trained in pruning. I can do it, but I don't very much because I remember, because like Mike had one of these gardens out on, it took a year or two till I actually got out to see it, but it was like, what? This is what's going on here? And he wasn't there. I was just wandering around, and plants plants that I knew, trees, shrubs, were not doing anything like what I had ever seen them do before. And I think that's when the seed got planted of like, yeah, let's just see what plants can do on their own. And so I knew him best in roughly the year 2000 to 2002. It was a little window where I got to study our, as Mike called it, sun-loving, drought-tolerant plants that grow on Vashon. And that was a whole vocabulary for me. I knew a lot about plants and all kinds of other capacities, but that was what he taught me, and especially propagation. And, you know, his nursery, I don't know, I mean, just spending a lot of time at his nursery was wild, quite different than any other nursery. The tolerance for weeds, the tolerance for things to just grow anywhere was very high, and yet he was able to hand plants over to his customers that were what they wanted. And what a charming guy.
Could you tell us your name?
Fran Brooks. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll say a word. So my name is Ian Barclay. I haven't gotten up in front of people like this in years, but that's okay. I've known Mike since I think 1997, and he was a good friend. I would just highlight, I think, looking back, his encyclopedic plant knowledge and his generosity. I remember when I was in high school, I was just getting interested in plants, and I used to sit around reading the Western Garden book. And then I eventually figured out there's all these nurseries that are selling cool stuff. So I sent out for all these catalogs, got my Cobos Creek catalog, got Heronswood catalogs, got all kinds of catalogs, Forest Farm, whatever. And I started writing some of these places to see, you know, just to engage them and ask them about rare plants. And the only one who sent me like a nice handwritten letter was Mike. You know, even though he's got his landscape architecture practice and he's running the nursery 2 or 3 days a week or whatever, he sent me a nice letter after I'd asked him about some really obscure stuff like Andean wax palms and just off the wall, you know, stuff that I was just looking at, you know, trying to research, because this was before the internet really took off. And after I got to know Mike, I first visited Cobos Creek in 1998, and I bought some stuff from him. But after I got to know him, I came to appreciate that his knowledge is probably broader than what's in that Western Garden book. I mean, he might not know, he doesn't know every last species or cultivar of prunus and everything, but he knows a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, and it sticks with him. You know, I had a customer asking me about obscure camellia cultivar, and I mentioned it to Mike, and he was like, "Oh, why would you want to grow that one? It's got an ugly flower." This was, and then that was just a couple of years ago. I mean, so all this stuff in his head about all these cultivars and plants is just immense. I actually think he's got, you know, the highest level plant knowledge genius anywhere of anybody that I've ever met in my life. And no offense to anybody else present, nursery people. And the other thing I would just highlight is he was always generous. You know, every year he'd ask, when am I going to come visit? Because he wants just to catch up. And, you know, or I'd ask him sometimes. And I'd go out in the fall and he'd let me take cuttings from his garden. I mean, probably a third of the plants I have now are probably just cuttings from him. But some of those came from me in the first place, or some of them came from him before that. And but he would always invite my family over. I've got 2 kids and a wife, and he would always cook salmon chowder for us. That became an annual tradition. So just a super nice, generous, super humble. Other people have said that. I did one collecting trip with him in California. That was really fun. But I'm very, very privileged to know him. He's really been an inspiration for me, for my own, you know, plant nerdy stuff and my nursery and everything. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just talk from here if that's okay. My name's Laisha. I've never needed a microphone. And I first met Mike back in the mid to late 1990s when he had stuff at the store. And I was one of the key people for Plant Amnesty running their big plant sale. And I got assigned to go out to him and pick up because I was born a military brat. My father was an operations officer, and I have a General Laisha persona when it comes to loading things and getting things done efficiently. And I got roasted, in fact, at a Plant Amnesty banquet once for my stuffing plants, collecting plants for the plant sale, stuffing them in every nook and cranny, including the glove box of vehicles, right? So they sent me out there because it was one of the farther treks. And so I called him to get some idea of what kind of space I should be budgeting for. And he was his soft-spoken, gentle, sweet, vague self. And I remember being very frustrated because I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted to do this, you know? And then I got there, we met at the store, and he just kept handing me stuff. Handing me stuff, and handing me stuff, and handing me stuff, and handing me stuff, and handing me stuff. And I was like, oh my God, you know, this guy's like so generous. And I just kept tucking it, you know, everywhere, under the seats, everywhere. And then he said, okay, then we've got another place to go to. I was like, are you kidding me? It's like, okay. And so we went to another place and loaded up some more plants. And by then I had realized that he was just like this amazing person, this just amazingly nice person. And so that became one of the highlights of my year, is to plan the trek out to Mike's to pick stuff up. And then when I had the opportunity to go out and help at his garden with propagation stuff, that was just incredibly awesome because I'm sort of this pathological plant propagator. It's like I see a broken off thing, I'm like, oh, I can root that, you know? And I have a green thumb to the point where it's a problem. I'm sure there's a few of you here who might be able to relate to that. And anyway, I learned a lot from him, talking the minutia of some of those things. And I loved volunteering out at the garden and doing all those trips. And then we discovered that our birthdays were just a couple of days apart. And so that was always very, very nice. And then at the very end of his life, I had done a lot of hospice work, and the very end of his life, just serendipitous thing, I wound up having to take the Fauntleroy Vashon, Fauntleroy Southworth ferry twice a week. And so I would stop by there on my way back and just sit with him and talk about things for a lot of hours. And he was just truly just such a genuinely nice, good person. And I can be a little cranky and grumpy, anybody who knows me. And I can't, there's nothing in the world that I could say about Mike ever. And I'm not sure I can say that about anybody else. Maybe once, he gave me a plant once that I found out had a pink flower, and I happened to just dislike pink. And so we teased each other about that a little bit, that he gave me a pink flower. But just one of the nicest human beings on this planet. And so the last few weeks of his life, I feel really honored to be able to spend that time with him. And I would always go out to the garden and pick some stuff and bring it in to him when he couldn't go out anymore. And it brought him to tears a couple of the last times. He wanted to go outside so bad, you know. So I would bring him stuff in, pile it all around him. He would just smile. So just a really good human being and a role model to me. Because he was an amazing man. Yeah, amazing really person. One of a kind. Really was. Unique.
And I have to say, sometimes I felt like I was talking to the Dalai Lama.
Yeah. And we talked about some really esoteric stuff like that. And yeah, we talked in fact about the Dalai Lama. This last few weeks of him, we actually talked about the Dalai Lama. And one of the things that, there was an interview with the Dalai Lama that he was talking about death, and he was talking about birth, and that when a child is in the womb, they think they're dying when they're being born. It's traumatic for them. The adults are celebrating, you know, the other adults are celebrating, but for the child, it's a traumatic experience, birth is. And the Dalai Lama had talked about that in an interview, and we actually talked about that.
Well, at 7 o'clock, keep the conversation going. People can start helping themselves with food. There's a bathroom in that corner. There's a bathroom halfway up the stairs to the roof. There's a roof garden with some seating up there. And why don't we start having dinner and keeping the conversation going?
Thank you so much for having us.
Judy, don't walk away. Thank you. Thank you.
Judy,